Working or not? Yeah, okay. All right, guys. How's it going? Luminostic. More on the Phoenix process tonight and kind of some big news. Let me get into my control panel because I have a funny feeling I probably have a setting that's gone awry because that happens every time. No, it looks good. And okay, so lately we've been talking about the Phoenix process, which is just a name that I gave for a process that I went through many years ago that involved a sharp increase, not only in the instance of synchronicities, but also in the improbability factor of them, just like absolutely absurd stuff. And one of the most interesting elements of it all was that, hello, Charles, the synchronicities and the sort of, I don't want to say supernatural, but like borderline supernatural stuff that happened didn't care if there were witnesses, Like usually this stuff it seems like it happens privately more, and that was really a blessing for me, honestly, because I would have just thought I was losing my mind otherwise. I'm really skeptical and critical, or critical thinking, not critical like judgy. So I was really appreciative of that fact because it really helped me to have a lot of confidence that something was actually happening. And all of these years later, I started to sense a recurrence of these kind of themes and patterns. And I predicted that within the next couple of months, it was going to intensify again. This isn't really something that ever, can shrooms help you see hidden dimensions or colors? Absolutely. I'll get into all of that in just a minute. Let me just push through this little bit of introduction so I can set up this last coincidence that happened yesterday that's just really hilarious. I mean, I don't know if it's hilarious. It's something for sure. And so I predicted this recurrence of these incidents, and down to the macro things like a massive solar storm and a lot of other instances to micro stuff, just little coincidences in my life, precognitions and stuff, and they started to occur very rapidly and at a much higher level of intensity. And so just to give an example of the continuity of this process, apparently. Of course, anything could be, pure coincidence without any meaning. But last night in our patron-only voice chat, we got to talking about, how can it be possible that with this level of opposition, with the elite, putting so much pressure on people to divide, and the agitation of the ant farm and all that, and then AI and the super surveillance, and Microsoft just put out the Copilot Plus that remembers everything you've ever done on your computer, whether it was on the internet or in private. You know what I mean? How do we overcome all this stuff? Is it even possible? And I said, well, you never know what's going to happen. Maybe Charles, or what's his name, Klaus Schwab, if people like Klaus Schwab just die or retire out of nowhere, the person that takes over in their spot might be a little bit better. There can be all kinds of surprises. I wake up this morning, Klaus Schwab had retired. So I just really felt like that kind of reinforced what I've been saying lately about how this process really, your success is your proof. Let's just leave it at that. I also wanted to address a criticism that I've heard in a couple of different ways that is, in a sense, valid. It's, something I'm going to devote an entire live stream to probably tomorrow or the next day whenever I have time. But basically, I oftentimes criticize a lot of these New Agers like Dolores Cannon, Bashar, all these sort of asshats. And then people will say to me, you talk about 11/11, synchronicities, apparent manifestations, talking to aliens and shit. How is what you do any different than what all of these people do? And I'm partly addressing this because I think that one of the people that suggested this will probably see it. But, the key difference is this. I say I've had these experiences that could be this, could be that, could be this other thing. You know, I feel like I demonstrate more proof, but less certainty than all of those people, and that's really my fundamental problem. And it actually goes beyond that. Dolores Cannon, for example, has, in my opinion, polluted the minds of millions and millions of people with absolute garbage, fully well aware that she was full of shit. And I'll give you one bit of proof, and then I'm going to move on to the subject, because I don't really care that much. But it just seemed like, you know, there were some valid points there, that a lot of the stuff that I say is kind of consistent with a lot of these people. And of course, I've addressed that in all kinds of different ways. But I'll give you one example of how you know Dolores Cannon, just for example, is absolutely full of shit. She said in 2013, "I have recently discovered a way to heal any illness instantly." When you hear someone say something that obviously false and outrageous, and, you know, demonstrably, like, there's no way that that's true. There's no way she doesn't know it's not true. You know, that you have a huge problem, you know? So partly to respond to this person, you know, I think that sort of thing does a tremendous amount of harm. You know, another issue is with Teal Swan becoming so confident, partly because of Dolores Cannon's influence, that she has told depressed people that because we reincarnate, we don't need to worry if we kill ourselves, we'll just be back. It's just a reset. And 2 of her followers that were heavily depressed that she said this to killed themselves. So I'm just making the point that I can't deny that a lot of this stuff that the New Age movement has absorbed from legitimate channels and dumbed down and turned into pretty much pop culture garbage and misconstrued and re-engineered to make it more marketable, has some truth to it. Nevertheless, acting like you are too certain about things you do not know causes tremendous social harm. So that's where, yeah, that's the thing, you know. I mean, I'm making observations and asking questions. I'm not asserting any kind of absolute knowledge of anything, so I hope that helps anyone that was, you know. Okay, so I'm going to keep going with this Phoenix process theme in a minute, but I'll address these questions in the chat. So, can shrooms help you see hidden dimensions or colors? What is meant by hidden dimensions? What are hidden dimensions? Are they spaces between space that we can enter with our consciousness that don't actually exist physically? Is it the multiverse? Are you talking about other universes where the rules may be slightly different? Because in my opinion, those are entered through black holes more than likely, not through psychedelics. So, you know, there's 2 parts to this question, and one of them is that, you know, can mushrooms legitimately reveal unseen elements of our universe that are actually real? That, I would say, absolutely yes. The idea that there's a reducing valve in our consciousness that filters out a lot of the reality, much of it being spectrums of the fuller spectrum of light, you know, that to me is a certainty. But the existence of other dimensions, what is meant by other dimensions, you know, mathematically, other dimensions means something entirely different than spaces that you can enter into where there might be demons or angels or, you know, whatever kind of denizens of other realms you might expect. So to get back to this Phoenix process theme, one thing that I wanted to mention, just because this all got me thinking about it, you know, I'm like, if we're going back into this pattern, you know, and let me give you another example of what I'm talking about and why I have so much confidence that that these patterns repeat in the way that I'm talking about. You know, I made the example of how early on in the first round of the Phoenix process, for me personally, there was this massive solar storm. And then I predicted that it was coming back and started experiencing these insane coincidences with, you know, groups of people again, almost like a replay, but on a whole nother level, you know. then this massive solar storm happens. Like, it's like on my micro scale, it's happening. On the macro scale, the details are all the same. And then you can blow that up again, right? And you can look at the 1960s. Racial tension, war fomenting around the world, pointless wars based on false premises, right? An explosion of psychedelic drugs, a Kennedy running for president. It's all the same shit again, you know? That's another way that I'm able to anticipate this stuff, is by just looking at the fact that the entire pattern is just cycling over and cycling over and cycling over, down to the fact that many of the details, the like micro details, are the same, you know? So it's really just something else. But so I was thinking about this, you know, what started this? When was the actual beginning? And I remembered what I think might be the first, really over-the-top synchronicity that I ever experienced. And I know that it couldn't have been, because I had been talking to my roommate about this, and I know it was because it had happened. But the first one that I remember, my roommate asked me what synchronicity was. And I know I had experienced them before I learned the term. So I don't think this was my first experience of it, but it is the first thing I remember. We had The Wolfman's Brother by Fish playing on the stereo, and he said, "What is a synchronicity?" And I said, "Well, it's when a coincidence occurs that is like, it has too much meaning and is too highly improbable usually to really be dismissed as like a, totally random coincidence." And as soon as I was done explaining, the Fish singer sang, "The telephone was ringing and the telephone rang," at exactly the same time. And I was like, well, there you go, right? So I think it was only like a couple of weeks later that I was at work, and I was standing out behind the shop. It was a glass shop. We were glazers, and we were, we had different stuff we had to do. Sometimes we had to fix hot tubs or deliver hot tubs. I still have a double hernia from that just actually the surgery just failed, and I have to get it redone. So hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron or contributing on PayPal, Zelle, or cryptocurrency, because I'm demonetized and I'm old, so I need surgeries and shit, apparently. So we're standing out back of the shop, and my coworker, I said something about a tarantula hawk. A tarantula hawk is this gigantic fucking wasp that kind of flies like bouncing off the ground in the desert. We have them here in Peru. They were bigger in southwestern Colorado, and it's one of the most painful stings of any insect. It's a really bad thing. You don't want it to happen. And I was talking to my coworker, and I mentioned that, and he said, "What is a tarantula hawk?" And the second that came out of his mouth, one landed on his face. I mean, the chances of that happening have got to be like astronomically minuscule, And so I guess partly, what does this say? Back on now, I have had synchronicities. I'm sorry to hear. Oh, yeah, well, it's not that big of a deal, the hernia thing. It's just kind of a pain in the ass. What's going on, Fish? It's been a while. People on LSD teleporting. I can't believe you said that, and I hate that you're going to see synchronicity again. I hate that you're making me actually tell this story, because it's almost so insane that it's like embarrassing to have to talk about it. So once upon a time, I was pretty ill, but I felt kind of obligated to try to push through some things that I had scheduled, and one of those things was an LSD trip. And with decades of experience at high doses with everything under the sun, I couldn't have imagined that I would have had some kind of difficulty. But I did. I got stuck in a loop really badly. And then this thing started happening with this person who was sort of a client and friend, and he did acknowledge this eventually, but at the time he was in total denial about it. He had not integrated his shadow at all. He had no awareness that he even had a subconscious. He literally told me when I asked him later, about his level of subconscious integration, he said it never even occurred to me that I had a subconscious. And that was a really shocking answer, but he started slipping back and forth into this like dark subconscious, like scary, and he's like 6'8" or something, this huge Dutch guy. And I was like sick and broken. I had a baby in the house and my partner, and I couldn't defend us at all. I could barely get up. And so I ended up throwing him out and in the middle of the night because he was scaring me. And so I was kind of, after that happened, I was like, holy shit, what just happened? Would we really just throw him? We're in the middle of the jungle. He's going to die out there. So I started kind of panicking, and at one point I was standing beside the bed looking at my partner, and the next moment it was like I was being poured out of a fucking particle, like a point, like a tiny, tiny point in space, and just poured out of this point and like filled up almost in my body like I was being poured like liquid into a cup. And I was suddenly outside, like there were steps and stairs, and 50 yards from the house by this huge fence. And I swear to God, I guess it's possible, that I had like blacked out and just walked over there somehow. But the speed that I returned and the way that my partner reacted, I'm honestly still half convinced that I actually teleported. And it was funny because right after it happened, right after I realized that I had just like poured out of some point in space and like reformulated in another area, I remembered hearing all these hippie acid heads in like Deadlot and stuff claiming that had happened to them and thinking like, man, you guys got way, 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 way too high. But, that's like way off the subject, but that's, I got to respond to that comment because as far as I can tell, that's what actually happened to me. So, speaking of psychedelics, this is a bit of an awkward transition here, but I want to make sure that I get to all of these topics, and it's all very important. Higher consciousness and the Cusco events. I had to look at my title and even see. By the way, you guys, AMA is always open. You can ask anything you want, and I'll do my best to try to manage it. And for those of you that are just jumping on, basically what I'm suggesting is that, as like everyone can tell, we are going into some new phase of human existence. And, the cause and the purpose, I think, can be really, really easy to understand even without invoking woo. I think that we have the capacity, especially in terms of our consciousness, to be provoked to evolve much more rapidly, deliberately, and consciously in the face of an existential threat. Right? Like you guys hear about, moms that, some crazy thing happens to their kid and they suddenly have superhuman strength. And I even saw a woman do this with her dog the other day. There was a bear coming over the deck and this old lady like ran over and started like punching it and slapping it, and the bear just ran off, to protect her dog. I don't know if you guys realize how hard you got to hit a bear to make it care when it's already got prey in its sight, and it's already moving on it. I'm kind of suggesting that we as a race have that, obviously, if we can do it, if a mother can do it for her kids, then you would imagine that the whole of humanity can do it for the whole of humanity. So, there are a lot of evolutionary drivers that are pushing this change in our fundamental perception even of reality and the way that we interface with it, and it's also really interesting to me that there are so many tools that are being provided by the universe, in the perfect moment, in the perfect manner. It's like that old magician's rule that any required change can be affected by the proper kind and degree of force through the proper medium to the proper object, right? So, we have suddenly AI and cryptocurrency and psychedelics and all of these things that facilitate our ability to compress information, absorb that information, and transmute that information to some kind of meaningful action. It's interesting to consider that the interface of the psychedelic mind or the spiritual mind, or however you're inclined to think about it, and AI, for example, when it's used in the optimal way, by an intelligent person that is trying to progress themselves, the whole point of ritual magic in the Western tradition is that not the whole point, but one of the main tools is that you're able to compress information so that you can manage it more rapidly, and that allows you to ascend the ladder of consciousness at an accelerated rate, right? So with AI, you're doing the same thing. You're able to summarize entire books and compress them down and just have it remove all of the wheat from the chaff for you, and in so many different ways. So if you consider that on the one hand, we have these compounds and practices and breath work, all this stuff that people have become aware of over the last couple of decades, and that pretty much everyone that is not completely brain dead and asleep is utilizing in some way, shape, or fashion, that make our brain more receptive to new information, that allow us to enhance our memories. I mean, in case you guys aren't aware of what neuroplasticity and neurogenesis really is, neurogenesis refers to the brain's ability to produce new neuronal pathways and parts and pieces, cells more rapidly. And neuroplasticity refers to its ability to adapt and to take new programs. And so these compounds, despite what we were told for the first 50 years by a government who actually was told the truth by researchers and knew they were lying the whole time, which is a completely different subject, but certainly not irrelevant, we're being provided with the materials to upgrade our hardware just as the new software is dropping, basically, So it's like we kind of fear being overrun by AI and all of these other crazy things. But the reality is, if you're smart enough and you're paying attention and you know what to do and how to do it, you can create the circumstances that allow you to adapt in an optimized manner to your new circumstances. And a great way to do that is coming to our events in August, September. Let's see, what are we doing? July? No, August and September for sure. In Peru, if you're interested in that, it will be San Pedro, Ayahuasca, Yopo, ritual magic classes, and I'm seeing a lot of activity in the chat, so I'm just trying to read it. And also a lot of superfoods we'll be consuming, like the kushuru, that is a blue-green algae that lives in the high country lakes here. I was confused. Okay, just checking in the chats, guys. I saw myself do electrokinesis. Electrokinesis? What? Okay, well, Stretch makes a good point. I wonder if the change you speak of is us becoming more severed from nature and not some positive evolution. I mean, does it really feel like we're going forward? Some of us, yes, and that's the thing. This is one of the most difficult things for people to understand and process about the way the universe works. The yin-yang shows it explicitly, every different great, sage or mystic, from Christian mystic to the Buddha, have recognized this. For everything that happens, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if you look around the world right now, you see all these, I mean, you have like Russian people doing yopo and stuff, you know? I mean, this crazy renaissance of psychedelics and plant medicine, and actually is much bigger than the one that happened in the 1960s. And if it wasn't for the New Age movement, it would be far more effective, you know? We have a lot more understanding of psychology, just like your average individual walking down the street, than we did in the 1960s. I mean, you know, you guys, a lot of those boomers, just they thought that psychedelics were a fake and had let them down, when in reality they just didn't know what the fuck they were doing. So, you know, we're in a much better position. And we are pushing further. And there are conversations that are possible, for example, between, you know, your average person walking on the street that would have been reserved to the sages and people like Terence McKenna and Timothy Leary, you know, 40 years ago. So yeah, we have gone way fucking far forward, way far forward. And honestly, a lot of the people that think that we're not moving forward are just kind of stuck in right-wing ideology, or you know, there's a lot of reasons why people fail to perceive the positive potential in this moment, right? At the same time, whenever you have, if one person moves up to a higher, more enlightened state, you're going to have an equal descent in another person into ignorance and stupidity. That's how the universe works. And, you know, I don't care if you believe it or not, it's definitely a fact. It's a fact of physics, it's a fact of just look around you. You know what I mean? Just look around you. You can see it everywhere. And then you might ask, so then what is the point? What is the point? If it's really true that every single motion in any direction is going to be equally compensated for by motion in the opposite direction, what is the fucking point of doing anything? Well, that's a good question. That's why it's called the devil's bargain. This is why duality is such a bitch, you know? It's gotten to, or it's been expressed by St. John of the Cross, for example. Writing about this, he said, so should we sin that grace may come? You know? I mean, that was like the Christian paradox for him, was like, wait a minute. If this is true, then that means that Satan is the savior of the world, because it's the ultimate evil that produces the ultimate good, or is it the ultimate good that produces the ultimate evil? You know, the Buddha made some indirect references to this by saying that if you do good, then bad things will happen. If you do bad, then good things will happen. And so all you can do is sit and breathe if you want to escape karma. That is what the real point of this absolute lack of attachment and a total focus on the breath and non-action and all that shit is about, escaping this fact that you can't really extricate yourself from it unless you balance your equation to zero without any fluctuations. You know, and there's been a lot of other ways that this has been talked about, but here's the thing. Bring Einstein into the equation, since it's an equation and all, and the idea of relativity. So we have a phenomena that I talk about in the universe a lot called entrainment. So anything that pulses draws the lower pulsing shit up with it. In my opinion, this is why dogs do what humans tell them to. This is why a magician, when he says that he has the power of God to allow him to constrain a demon to his will, what he really means is the law of entrainment has got this thing stuck, so it has no choice but to cycle up to the higher cycle. So, if this is a closed system, the universe, then there's a floor, and whatever's raising up is going to pull the whole thing with it. So although we will never really probably be rid of evil and destruction and all of these antinomies that balance the light and give it something to reflect off of, more or less, we can probably raise the floor, you know? So this dualistic trap should not really, you know, put you in a state of existential dread. It did that to me for a long time until I came up with the idea of raising the floor as a solution to the fact that It's always kind of expanding in both directions at once. So, yeah, I do think that we're progressing and moving forward. In fact, from what I can tell, nothing in the universe happens without some kind of purpose. You know, it's really wild to me that the idea that the universe is this random, purposeless gobbledygook is so prevalent with people in the modern era is crazy, because I've never seen anything do anything without purpose. You know, I don't understand creation without a sense of purpose. And so, you know, I really don't think that it's just all kind of happening, and that we're not going anywhere. We're definitely going somewhere, but it may be that we're just going in every direction at once, and that's all that's ever going to happen. So that's another one of my issues with the whole New Age thing. You know, the Dolores Cannons of the world talking about the new Earth that's going to emerge, and that these aliens have told them all this stuff. And, you know, it's just, there are solutions that may emerge. There are emergent properties all throughout the universe that are surprising, that we could not have anticipated or imagined before we're confronted with them. But one thing that I'm certain of is that none of the laws of the universe are just going to stop applying, you know, and we're never going to find ourselves in some fairy tale comic book. So those kind of ideas, I think, kind of detract from people's motivation and determination, and their understanding of the necessity of the application of real modalities of training, of personal development, of you know, the pursuit of knowledge. It kind of gives people like this candy-ass pie-in-the-sky kind of hope that they can just wait for the light beings to fix everything for them. So, you know, I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think that we certainly could find ourselves able to transmute all of this chaos and darkness and negativity into alchemical gold, which is really all the entire universe is doing. What state is that, Gray Note? I'm curious. No, we do not have palm grubs here. Is the stream, what do you call it, lagging for you guys? Because I'm getting this message that it is, and I'm also yep. Yeah, well, the other stream is lagging, I think, because it's telling me that there's a problem with it or something. So, how long have I been? I think in response to this information, gang violence. What are you talking about? What is that random comment there? Okay. Well, since I'm getting these disturbing messages that it's lagging, and I think the reason is that although I'm the only one that pays for the internet, there's like 5 people here using it. So I'm going to get off and complain about that. And then, no, actually, I think one of them did pay me. But I guess, yeah, going to keep it short tonight because I'm still doing a secret stream on my patron-only channel, and I just got started late, so this was a relatively unfocused and informal stream. I almost just wanted to get on to talk about what happened with Schwab last night. Kahame was there. He saw it. Yeah, so short stream tonight, but then I'm going to jump on in probably 20 minutes. If you're a patron at the $10 tier or higher, join me for some elucidation and pontification upon the 25th degree of Freemasonry. And Colorado, nice. Yeah, I used to live in Colorado. For 10 years, I lived, actually, most of these stories, the older stories that I have, are from Durango, Colorado. They mostly occurred in this little valley. Man, I missed that valley. It was so beautiful in the evening. But cheers, guys. I'll see you again soon.